Hey you, I'm Sarah Turner. I'm a freelance medical copywriter, and today I want to talk to you about how you can become a freelance writer so that you can live life on your own terms. When I set out to be a freelance writer about 6 years ago, I went through a long process of taking in all the information I found online and going through what worked and what didn't to really figure out how I could make it a sustainable life, a sustainable career. And when I was first starting out, I wasn't quite sure which direction I was going to go, but I pretty quickly ended up being a copywriter, which is sales writing or writing designed to get somebody to act. And the reason I chose copywriting is because I really enjoy the psychology behind it, the fact that it gets my clients results, and also it generally pays better. If you're like me, you probably think of, when you think of like writers in general, right? We think of the starving artist type, the person who's pulling their hair out, who's trying to finish a novel, who's broke, who's crazy, who drinks too much. I mean, that was the image I always had in my mind of being a writer. So it was really surprising for me to discover that you can actually have a sustainable income and career as a freelance writer. A lot of it is, going through the process to set it up like a business and presenting yourself and continuing to deliver value to your clients. That's how you're going to make it something that's actually sustainable. So there are a couple of questions I want to be sure to answer. Like, what are the beginning steps of becoming a freelance writer? What materials would you need, or what books do I recommend? What are the qualifications? How much money can you make? And can you actually quit your full-time job? So I'm going to answer those kind of throughout, going through like the story and giving you some feedback. So if you've already looked into being a freelance writer, you've probably come across some pretty generic lists. Things like push through your fears and track your income. And, I found a lot of that advice starting out, which is why I've kind of set out to set the record straight, kind of pull back the curtain and let a lot of people see what it actually takes to start being a freelance writer and then to also make it a thriving business. Because there is a lot of regurgitated advice out there, advice that has just been said over and over again by a lot of different people in different ways. So it's a lot more than just having a good attitude and starting to write and knowing people in the industry. But I will say that in 2019 and beyond, it is the best time to be a writer because everything is moving online, and especially a copywriter, because everything is moving online. People need content and copy more than ever. So it's actually probably, it is the best time to be alive and to be a writer. And there's high demand, and it's only going to continue to increase. So what are some of the steps of becoming a freelance writer? And, this is specific to copywriting, but it also would apply to anyone who wants to be maybe a copywriter a content writer or a technical writer. This is all pretty much going to be a process that anyone could follow to be a freelance writer. So the first thing is to pick a niche, because to be specialized is how you're going to set yourself apart. It's how you're going to become an expert. It's how you're going to get to know an industry, how you're going to serve your clients better, get them better results. And also it's going to give you a baseline knowledge so that you aren't starting from scratch every time you sit down to write. So picking a niche is probably the number one mistake I see rookie writers make. You gotta pick a niche. It's the same reason that when we go to the doctor and our heart is hurting, we don't go to a gastroenterologist or a generalist. Like, your heart is like something, if there's something wrong with your heart, you're gonna go to a cardiologist. So same thing with writing, copywriting, you gotta pick a niche. I really think this is the biggest mistake rookies make. The next thing you're going to want to do is study your industry. So if it's copywriting, I recommend studying some of the classics in copywriting. Those are pretty easy to find. Swipe.co is a great resource for some awesome copy. To actually hand copy, that's a really good way. When you hand copy other people's writing, you actually get out of your own pattern of writing. You start to learn and take in what they're doing, and it's a way to kind of get you to write differently and learn while also taking action, because I'm all about taking action. And then learning if you're going to do copywriting, some of the basics. So again, learning some of the techniques. Again, same with technical writing. There's so many books and resources and information on all sorts of writing. Then the next thing you're going to want to do is to actually start writing. And I think a lot of people are always surprised at how quickly I recommend that step. Because truly, at the end of the day, the only thing that's going to make you a better writer is to start writing. And the great thing about being a freelance writer, copywriter, content writer, technical writer is when you're writing for other people and you're writing for clients, it's a little bit easier because you're usually given a prompt, and sometimes you contribute to that prompt, but you're usually given some sort of guidelines, some sort of guidance to guide your writing. Because where people get hung up when they're writing is generally when they're writing for themselves or when they're trying to come up with a novel. And there we go, back to that whole idea of being having the writer's block and pulling your hair out. So it doesn't really have to be that way. The next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to build yourself a website. At this day and age, anyone who wants to have a really successful business needs to have a basic website. I'm not talking anything fancy or crazy. No need to hire a web developer, but you definitely need to invest in a high quality website. And I personally recommend Squarespace. It's going to cost you about $200. There are cheaper ways to do it. You can do it practically for free with WordPress, but ultimately you want it to look really nice, high-end, timeless, because that's going to communicate to clients that you are valuable, that you're a professional, that you know what you're doing. I mean, it's a lot of the communicating of setting up your business is going to be communicating through subtleties and through subconscious indications, like a website. If you get on a website and it looks super old school, you tend to not trust that person as more, and that is just a fact. So investing in a really beautiful website is something that I recommend for all writers. And again, it can be pretty cheap and also very minimalist. It doesn't need to be that fancy. It can be one page, have a little bit on there, but it's basically going to be your portfolio. And then the next thing is going to be that I always recommend you continue making yourself valuable. You will be so surprised that if you're constantly adding to your skills as a writer, and for example, if you're in copywriting, learning a new form of copy or learning a new technique. If you're a content writer, I'm sure that, like, learning how to craft ebooks, or if you're a technical writer, getting really specific about a certain type of technical writing. Like maybe it's white papers. I keep using copy because I'm a copywriter. But yeah, basically like always making yourself more valuable. Like just don't settle, because as you continue to add to your skill set, as you get better as a writer, you're going to be able to increase your prices. And that is kind of the name of the game here. You want to be able to increase your prices until you can afford to leave your full-time job. And so that is just something to keep in mind. I'm going to go through some of my favorite books. A lot of these are for copywriting, but some of them are for just writing in general. So some of the best books that you can invest in for becoming a freelance writer would be, and they actually have a lot of crossover, by the way, would be A Copywriter's Handbook, A Step-by-Step Guide to Writing Copy That Sells by Bob Bly. Breakthrough Copywriting, which is a really like quick and dirty intro to copywriting, how to write, and it's the subtitle is How to Generate Quick Cash with the Written Word by David Garfinkel. My Life in Advertising and Scientific Advertising by Claude Hopkins. Adweek Copywriting Handbook by Joseph Sugarman. Everybody Writes, which is a little bit more of a content-based book. Everybody Writes, your go-to guide to creating ridiculously good content by Ann Handley. Influence, the Psychology of Persuasion by Robert Cialdini. Never been good at pronouncing names. Okay, and then Start With Why, How Great Leaders Inspire to Take Action. Building a Story Brand is another good one. Pitch Anything is a fantastic one. And Pitch Anything isn't even about writing, it's about pitching. So, but it's something that everyone would benefit from. And then Story, Substance, Structure, and Style is Principles of Screenwriting, is another favorite book of mine. And that's about screenwriting. There's so much crossover when it comes to writing, which is why I think everybody would benefit from learning a little bit about copywriting. There's no way that copywriting won't make your writing for your next book or whatever better. So how much money can you make as a freelance writer? So this actually depends, one, on how good your writing is, but more than that, it actually depends on how you present yourself. And this is the thing that I see that kind of blows my mind. I have seen fantastic copywriters that do not charge what they're worth. so often. And then I've seen mediocre copywriters or just writers that are, crushing it because they're actually charging what they're worth, and or maybe even more. And that comes so much down to mindset. Like, how much do you think your work is worth? Are you challenging yourself? Are you constantly striving for better paying clients? Like, so much self-confidence and mindset actually plays a role in pricing yourself well. So I always encourage my students to work on their mindset, because when you start dealing with your fears around money, your fears around just success, like some people are afraid of being successful and they don't realize it until they start actually digging into their fears. Imposter syndrome is another big one. If you're not tackling your fears head on, you're probably not going to price your work at what it's worth. So, jumping down, one thing that people tend to, one thing that people tend to be surprised about when it comes to how much you can make as a freelance writer is how it all breaks down, because we're all so used to the idea of going to a 9-to-5 and working in a job where one company pays our entire salary. And when you think about it, that's kind of crazy. Like, you need one company to be able to pay you $50,000 a year, $70,000 a year, $90,000 a year. That company has to be massively successful to be able to afford a full-time writer. But now we live in a time where so many small businesses are coming online, and they have an online presence and they need a writer. And also a lot of people can't and don't want to write, so they need writers, right? So so there's so many small businesses these days that want freelance writers like you and me, and they are willing to pay you per project. And so for me, when I was first starting out, moving from the 9-to-5 mindset to the entrepreneur mindset, it was really hard for me to understand that all these little paychecks can really add up. So what I mean by that is, sure, maybe you have a client who's only paying you $400 a week and or a month, or maybe you have a client who's paying you $800 a month. And those little increments don't sound like a lot, but they actually add up. And I'm going to show you how. So the primary formula that I like to give people for 6 months, my free course is 6 months to 6 figures, but to earn 6 figures in a year, you would need to make about $8,000 a month. And that breaks down to $400 a day, 5 days a week. So not working on the weekends, right? So what you would need to be able to do that is either 2 $200 projects a day or 1 $400 project a day. So if you think about it like that, then you start to think, okay, what can I do in the written world, whether it's copywriting, content writing, or technical writing, to earn $200 to $400 a day? And I'm here to tell you that there are a lot of options. In fact, one of the examples I often give are blogs, because they are kind of the low-hanging fruit in the world of copy and content, and they are needed on a regular basis. So if you can get to the point with your skill set, meaning you're learning about SEO and you're learning about, strong call to actions, and you're bringing value to your client with your blogs, and you can charge $200 a blog, which is really reasonable if you're bringing enough value to it. You can write 2 blogs in a day. There you go, $400. Landing pages, for example, those can be thousands of dollars or a few $100s. $400 easy for a landing page. Ebooks, if you could make 1 ebook in a day for a client and charge $400, boom, you've hit your daily goal. And so it's all about hitting those daily goals, hitting those weekly goals, and hitting those monthly goals. And it all comes together a lot more easily, I think, than people realize. And I get it, because it was weird to me, like $200 here and $200 there, like that is not enough money. That is not going to, feed me. But it does. It really does. And it's just a good way to think about it. Another part about, shifting from needing one company to pay all of your income to having multiple clients paying your income that I have really come to love is that I'm never going to lose my job. I'm never going to be completely out of work or out of income, right? Because let's say I have 10 clients. If one of them leaves, and that's going to happen, that just happens. Like, either they can't afford you anymore, or they hired a marketing agency, or you guys don't get along, or you fired them because they're jerks, or I mean, there's a million different reasons why it might not work out. They're having personal issues and want to like take a break. So there's a million reasons it might not work out, but when that happens, I don't lose my job overnight. I don't lose all my income. And for me, that mindset shift has given me a lot of ease, especially like, it wasn't that long ago where a lot of people unexpectedly lost their jobs. And now I know that it is very unlikely that I'm going to lose all of my work overnight. So when you start to think of it that way, becoming a freelance writer, it actually can be a pretty safe bet. But again, it's going to be all about how you position yourself and about charging what you're worth. You're going to have to make sure you work on that and that you do that. So I also want to like go over some really common questions I get asked about being a freelance writer. So one is, do you need a college degree? And the answer is absolutely not. One of my best students only had her high school diploma. And I say only because it was like amazing to me how much she just kind of ran with it and she's so successful with it. And that being said, like you're definitely going to need some basic grammar and you're going to need to be able to string a sentence together, obviously. But copywriting is one that I really love, obviously, because it's more like writing like you talk. And grammar isn't as important. The other thing is like if your grammar is not that great, you can hire a proofreader and they can take a portion or a cut of your writing, but it will give you the ease of mind, the peace of mind, to know that your work is like on point. And that is another option, you can just charge a little bit more and make sure that it's perfect. Honestly, I love to have a proofreader for everything I write, even if I feel confident in my grammar, because it's just really hard to read your own writing, because when you skim it, you know what it's supposed to say and you tend to miss things like, oh, I didn't put the. So no, you do not need a college degree. And the other great thing about being a freelance writer is, I like to say, like, the proof is in the pudding. People can very quickly look at your writing and see whether or not they want to hire you. So it's not like you need a resume or you need to say, I've been doing this for 10 years. Like, pretty quickly, people can look at your work and decide whether or not they want to work with you. So practicing it is far more important than being able to say, I've done this for 10 years and I have a college degree. So and then that brings me actually to the next question, which is, do you need a degree or certificate? And like, absolutely not. In fact, it cracks me up when copywriters have certificates from copywriting courses and on their site, because honestly, like, most clients have no idea what that means. They're not in the world of copywriting. Only other copywriters are in the world of copywriting and know who those agencies, whatever groups are. So it just doesn't matter. What matters more is that you're bringing value to your clients. You are making their life easier. You are helping their business grow. You are constantly solving their problems and hitting their pain points, and you're just always bringing value. And your writing is good, but you can do that through practice. You can improve that through practice, rather. So got off on a little tangent on that one, but I could go on and on and on. So many people think that they don't have a degree in writing, and so they can't write, and that is just such an old school mindset I would love to crush. And then the other one is like, what if I'm not creative enough? Like, that was a huge thing for me, to know that I never really considered myself super creative. I'm much more science minded. I was a researcher, but I was surprised to find that there's a lot of writing that's needed that allows me to tap into, the more logical, research focused part of my brain, but also like pull in some creativity. And again, kind of like I said before, when you have a client who's giving you projects to work on, you don't need as much creativity. You don't need to sit down and come up with things to write about out of thin air. So it's interesting. Like, you definitely want a little creativity, but like, I didn't consider myself creative, and I am now like love writing, and I love the creativity it's allowed me to express and to grow. So yeah, I don't think being like a ultra creative person is necessary to be a successful freelance writer. Also, you can do technical writing. Like, if you love technical writing, there's so much work in that field. So yeah. And then the last question is, what about putting myself out there? How do I overcome the fear of putting myself out there? So this is actually one of the best things about being a freelance writer. Most of your interactions with your clients are online. via email or on the phone. So I am terrible with interviews, like so bad, it's embarrassing. And actually, I usually turn bright red. And sometimes it even happens when I'm on a call with a new client. I don't know what it is. It's like sometimes I'm not even nervous, especially now when I'm confident, but I will turn bright red. And it's so embarrassing. And so one of my favorite things is that there are almost zero face-to-face meetings. So you get to be on the phone, you get to put it all on in your voice, you can smile, which helps. It makes it sound like you're happy and confident. But more often than not, you're only going to communicate through email. And that's a benefit of being a freelance writer that I talk about that, I don't know, like not a lot of people are saying it, maybe because it's obvious, but you kind of get to hide behind your computer. And I don't know very many other jobs where you can just kind of hide behind your computer. So you get to do your writing thing. You don't have to have a lot of in-person meetings. And yeah, it's kind of just like the best of both worlds, in my opinion. So yeah, becoming a freelance writer is not as hard as people like to make it out to be. That being said, it is totally a ton of hard work, but I'm a firm believer that your mindset is everything. And so if you tell yourself it's going to be impossible and hard and all the things, you're going to make it harder on yourself. So just keep, mentors and people you want to be like in mind and follow them and do what they're doing. And you will be so surprised at how far you can take this thing. So I hope that helps. We need more freelance writers in this world. Everybody seems to think there are too many, but I personally think there are not enough. And I am so glad that you're thinking about being a freelance writer, and really give it a go. It's also something you can ramp up on the side alongside your full-time job. So there's no hurt in trying. Thanks for watching, and if you liked what you saw, go ahead and hit that thumbs up button and hit subscribe, and I'll be adding to my YouTube channel weekly, so feel free to leave what you'd like to see more of in the comments, and I'll be sure to follow up. Thanks, guys!